burning down pretty good now. Just wasted all this time and effort. Let's give this another shot. Now that is some pretty fancy shooting. That's something to brag about right there. Shot that playing card right in half. See how far that was. I'm going to walk it off. turned off the illuminated reticle. That's why I paused. Walked it off. It's exactly 15 yards. Hello, welcome back to another episode from Pale Horse Survival and Tactical. I'm Bill. Glad you could join me. In this episode, we're going to take a close look at the new Benjamin 392S, as in Sierra. Stay tuned. Well, welcome back. I thought I'd start this episode out with a little target shooting. And this is where I was shooting from, using the drag bag as a shooting mat. Wool blanket as a rest. And I was shooting from a range of exactly about 22 yards. It's my location here. I'm shooting Crosman Premier 14.3 grain hollow points and domed ultra magnums. Those two there, and there is the target. It's about 22 yards away. So let's go ahead and take a walk down there and take a look at the damage. Stay tuned. Okay, here we are downrange, and there's the grouping. I can actually stick my finger through this whole thing. It's completely shot out. There's a thumb for size comparison, with the exception of 2 rounds, and I think I got 2 through this hole here. The majority, and I don't know what I shot there, I'll have to count them. I think it was 10 or 12 rounds. I can cover everything with my thumb. If I kept going, I could have shot that whole center ring out there. Back. I bought the rifle from Pyramid Air, and I bought it as a package deal. I think I paid $280 something for the rifle. The rifle came with a scope and the scope intermount here, and this has a Weaver mount on it. I'm not affiliated with Pyramid Air at all, so I'm not trying to sell anything, just steering you guys in the direction of where I picked the rifle up. The scope that came in the package was a Leapers UTG 30mm scope. And when I got the rifle, I went over everything, tightened up all the fasteners. Usually they come a little bit loose from the factory, and made sure everything was snug, and then I set about cleaning the paint overspray out of the end of the barrel. I don't know what's going on with Crosman, and they have been doing that with the wooden stocked version of this, the 392, for a long time. I don't know why they don't plug the ends of these barrels. It'd only take a technician, a second to put a plug in there and save the consumer the task of cleaning out the paint overspray out of the end of these things. But anyways, I use paint stripper on a Q-tip. You can use acetone, some people do. It takes a long time that way, from my experience. So I use paint stripper. I put just a very light film on the end of the Q-tip, because if you put a lot on there, when you shove the Q-tip into the end here, it's going to get on the crown, and you can have a mess. So very light film, and you have to do it several times. And then I run a bore brush, not the bristle brass brush, but it's, I guess it's got wool or something on the end. Maybe it's cotton. It's kind of thick, and I ran that into the end and cleaned it out. And then I ran a cleaning rod through. Now, if you do that, you got to be very careful. These are brass, and you don't want to damage anything. Most cleaning rods are aluminum, I believe, but still, you got to be very careful. So if you do any of this and you screw your rifle up, don't blame it on me. You do have to know what you're doing and exercise some caution with this. Back to the scope. Cleaned everything up. I mounted the scope that came with it, scope intermount, then the scope. I went out to sight it in, and it was all over the paper, everywhere. I mean, 1 second it was way over to the left, then it was 6-8 inches low. Then it was way over to the right. I was doing everything I could to adjust, and I thought, man, I hope it's not the rifle. So I went home, cleaned the barrel again. I figured maybe I missed a little bit of overspray in there, and went back out, tried it again. It was everywhere, and finally I decided it's got to be the scope. I removed the scope and used the iron sights, and it was right on target. So the scope that they sent me was bad right out of the box, and that's my luck to get the one bad scope out of a warehouse full of good ones. So I went ahead and I upgraded with the Leapers UTG True Hunter. This is an illuminated reticle, adjustable objective, and parallax. Real nice magnification wheel on the back here, locking turrets. Real happy with it. And as you can see, it's super accurate. Actually, I'm really happy with this rifle. Now, I do own a wooden stocked, the original wooden stocked one in mint condition. Love it, grew up with them. Did a lot of hunting with these rifles as a kid. But I have to say, I mean, there's a lot of people, they're calling these junk, you know, because it's synthetic, it's plastic. But I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, this rifle's well made. I'm very impressed with it. It feels like a much higher end firearm in the hand. It's not cheap. I mean, it's really solid. It's got a little bit of heft to it. I have no complaints about it whatsoever. Very happy with it. I am sad, like everybody else, to see the wooden stocked version discontinued. I think Craftsman should have kept the wooden stocked version and entered this one into the lineup as an addition. So it is kind of crappy they discontinued that. I'm glad I do own one. But I'm telling you guys, this synthetic version is a very well made rifle, and I don't have any complaints with it whatsoever. I went over it, I tightened everything up, and got the scope sighted in pretty good. It's a consistent shooter. It feels really good. No complaints at all. And I did a review video on the wooden stocked version of this. It was about 3 years ago or so. And in that video I mentioned that the 392 is my all-time favorite bug-out air rifle. And there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, the platform has been out for decades. It's a very simplistic platform. It's tried and true. As kids, we shot the crap out of these, cycled thousands of rounds through them. Didn't take care of them. As kids, you throw them around. I don't think we ever lubricated the seals, and they just kept going. I don't ever remember one breaking down between myself and my friends. So it's a very dependable, simplistic platform. Number two, it's an all brass construction. The air tube is brass, the barrel's brass, so there's no rust issues. I've had people say, well, you know, brass corrodes. Well, it does corrode, but it takes a long time to corrode, and really what corrodes it, you'd almost have to submerge this underwater and just leave it there. I'd imagine like salt water would probably hasten the corrosion process, but one of these are not going to corrode in your lifetime. I mean, I know people who have some of these that are 50 years old and they still shoot great and there's no corrosion. So in a survival situation, if this was your bug out game getter, small game getter, this synthetic stock would be ideal. And also, if the scope fails for whatever reason, and they can, you remove the scope, you have iron sights. And I'm not knocking brake barrels or anything. I own a Benjamin XL 1100 Nitro. I like it. It's a well-made gun. My issue is it's a brick. It's super heavy, And brake barrels, the pivot point on the barrel tends to wear out after a while, and you get what's called barrel droop. And another thing is it's a more complicated platform, so you're not really going to be able to replace seals in the field. This you can. All you need is a pair of pliers, basically a pair of pliers and a Phillips screwdriver, and you can replace the seals on the air cylinder with one of these. So it can be repaired in the field, but it's a really good feeling rifle in the hand. It's very well balanced. I'm really impressed with it, to be perfectly honest with you. And I'm not impressed by a lot of things. I usually have complaints about things being cheap. There's a lot of cheap junk on the market. I kicked the idea around for about 2 months to buy this, and read a lot of reviews, and it's kind of mixed. You know, there's a lot of guys calling them junk, and because it's synthetic, and it's certainly not junk. Is it an improvement? I'm not going to say yes. I'm not going to say no. I own one of the wooden stocked versions, so I'm not going to say one's better than the other. The one difference with this, it's supposed to have a higher foot per second rating. I think it's almost 100 foot per second more. These you put 10 pumps in, not 8. The wooden stocked version is 8, so this is 10. And the only reason that I can figure that is that they have put a slightly larger air cylinder in this. So anyways, guys, also for those of you who have been following me for a while, about a month ago, I built a sling for this rifle and mounted the sling. This is a double and single cobra weave sling, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to include a link to that video in the description box below so you can check that out. And I did do some modifications to this, and I mentioned that in that video that I was going to reveal those modifications in this video, and I'm going to do so. So we're going to go over how I mounted the sling, and I've got a surprise that I discovered with this. At least it was a surprise to me. And I went ahead and I ran with it a little bit. So there's more to this rifle than meets the eye. And like I said, the 392 is my all-time favorite pick as a bug-out small game getter. This will keep food in your stomach. Small game is always more plentiful than large game, and in a societal collapse, grid down economic collapse scenario, large game will probably be hunted out pretty fast, and what's going to be left is small game, and there's a ton of small game out there, and it's not as easy to get. You know, there's guys out there, you know, my bug out rifle's an AR-15, or, you know, a 30-06 or a 300 or whatever. Hey, that's fine if that works for you. But if you shoot a squirrel with an AR-15, you're probably not going to have anything. You'd be lucky to find anything left of the squirrel. Same with a quail, whatever. So these are covert. They're not very loud. So it's not going to draw attention to you in a covert situation if you're trying to keep a low profile. You know, if you got a lot of starving people, societal collapse, and they hear a gun going off, it tends to draw attention. These you can hunt in a suburban environment if you had to, taking squirrel or whatever, and you're really not going to draw any attention to yourself. Pellets are small. You can carry 1,000 rounds in a 2 shirt pockets, easy, 2 500 round tins, and in a backpack it's nothing to carry 5,000, 10,000 rounds. That's a lot of ammunition. You don't have to worry about it getting wet. Moisture isn't going to bother it. They're just lead pellets, So there are a lot of advantages to that. And I grew up as a kid, I took everything from turkey down to squirrel with these as a kid, and was always bringing game home, and they do work. So anyways, let's go over the mods here, and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. I've got another one that I'm going to be shooting up here. So let's begin with how the sling is mounted. The sling was very easy to mount. I started looking at this thing and decided what I did was I punched out, there's 2 roll pins up here in the front. This one hooks onto the pump, anchors the pump pivot here. This one is just kind of a backup in the front, the second pin. And this is just a muzzle plug in the front. It's pretty solid on the inside. So I took a punch, roll pin punch, and if you're going to do this, if you don't have any experience at basic metal fabrication, machining, I suggest finding someone who does, because if anybody tries to attempt anything that I'm doing here and they screw the rifle up, that's going to be on you, not on me. I don't want anybody contacting me saying, hey, I screwed my rifle up. If you don't have the skill to do this, I suggest finding somebody or taking it to a gunsmith or whatever, because I don't want anybody screwing up their rifle and then trying to blame me for it. So that's my disclaimer in here. I worked 14 years professionally as a metal fabricator and welder, and I've done a lot of things in life, so I have a lot of skills that I've earned throughout the years. Okay, so I punched the front roll pin out. Now what I put in here was a standard Uncle Mike's. These are Uncle Mike's sling swivels, Uncle Mike's swivel stud. This is the stud with the machine thread. Now incidentally, I didn't have to drill that hole because the swivel stud fits right in there. It's almost a perfect fit. I was relieved because I really don't want to start drilling away on this thing. And the only problem was the swivel stud, once I pushed it in, there was almost no thread coming out the other side here. So what I did was, just give me a second here. Now this is a swivel stud, but that has the wood screws on it. The one that I put in here has the machine threads. It's a longer swivel stud. This one I'm going to use as for explanation purposes. So you'll see there's a little shoulder right here underneath the head, right on the bottom. It's a little shoulder right there. I had to ground that off because that won't fit in the hole. It's a little too wide. And then to gain a little more length, I ground the underside of this head up to the hole, and I stopped about 1/16 of an inch below this hole here. So I got rid of this bottom part, and I kept it even all the way around, and that gained about 1/4 of an inch of extra length on this swivel stud. So when I put it in, I didn't have a lot of thread sticking out. You're not going to bite a lot of thread with the nut that comes with your stud kit, but there was just enough to get I don't know, it's probably about 2 turns with the nut on the end, and I put some red Loctite on the end so it wouldn't work loose. And so with that in mind, we'll go back to this. So that's how it all lined up here. And on this, there's not a lot of thread that I'm biting on the end. I've got about 2 full turns with the nut, maybe 2.5. It's not a lot. But a drop of red Loctite, and then screw that on, and it's been holding just fine. Now this sling is detachable. I can pull the sling off, that's not a problem. They come right off here. Pull that out, it swivels and the pin pops out. Now in the back side, I put another swivel stud, Uncle Mike's, and that's also machine thread, and it comes with a little washer, a little white washer in the kit. You're probably asking me, well, how'd you get that in there? Because there's a nut on the other side. So I wasn't going to run the wood screw in that we just looked at. That'd be a hokey way of doing it, because it's not going to stay. It's going to pull out and the hole enlarge, and pretty soon you got a mess there. So when I was going over this rifle, looking it over, I noticed on the butt plate there were two little holes. This is nice rubber back here, solid rubber. There were two little pinholes on the back side, and I started, it struck me, and I go, well, wait a second. I tapped on it, and it sounds solid. It doesn't sound hollow at all. And I go, well, those two little holes, there's got to be screws, and I thought, well, maybe this butt plate comes off. So I took a flashlight, I shined it down in the hole, and I could barely see a Phillips head looking back at me. It's down about a ½ inch. I go, I'll be darned. So I got a screwdriver out, pulled two coarse thread wood screw type Phillips screws out. They're real thin, and those threaded into two towers on the inside. Just had holes in them. When I did that, the butt plate popped off, and this whole buttstock's hollow. This whole thing's hollow back here. I said, well, I'll be darned. I've got an area to put stuff in. So I kind of went with that and did some modifications. The butt pouch here is from Hunter Specialties. Again, I'm not affiliated with any of these companies. That's just where I got them, where I picked everything up. And this comes right off. It comes off after you pull everything out. There we go. So that pops right off, and now we've got this butt plate. Well, you'll see I put some screws on here. I kind of ran with the idea and did a few modifications. I wanted to make this user-friendly in the field. In case this rifle is all I have in a collapse situation. So I've got my Leatherman rebar here. Now these screws here are machine thread. They're combination slotted Phillips. That's combo slotted Phillips. I wanted those to be combo depending on what tool I have available. Now say I'm out, I grab the rifle, I don't have any tool. Maybe I lost my Leatherman. It was stolen, confiscated, whatever. Things have collapsed, all I have is the rifle. And I jet off with the rifle. Well, how do I get the screw out? Maybe I don't even have a knife. In my first video, when I built the sling, I added a washer in here, right here, onto the weave. The sling detaches fore and aft. That slot will fit that slot on the screws, and I can remove that butt plate if that's all I have to work with. Now these are 1032s. That's your thread pitch on these screws, and I think they're 1.5 inches long. We're going to go over what I have in the butt stocked here and in the pouch, the butt pouch, and then we'll wrap things up. Oh, I got another modification I forgot to mention too. This thing was really loud when I was pumping it. When I was out the first time, I was pumping it, and I mean, it was hitting, it would echo through the woods. And here's the buttstock pops right off. We're going to go over a few of the things that I did there, but back to this. I used hook and loop Velcro. I don't know if you can see that. Hook and loop Velcro here. This is the fuzzy part of the Velcro, that's the loop. And I cut a couple of pieces where the pump arm contacts on the inside, and it's a lot quieter now. It's about half as loud as it was. Okay, here's the butt stock end, the butt end. There's honeycomb there. I went ahead and I dremeled that out so it would fit a ferrule rod. Ferrule rod snaps right in, not going anywhere. I mean, it fit in there and snapped into place like it was made for it. Now the threads, I used brass threaded heat set inserts. You can see right here and here. And I set those in with a soldering iron. Again, if you try that, it's real easy to screw things up. So if you don't know what you're doing, you need to find somebody who does. Word of warning. And those are also 1032s. They match the thread pitch on the 1032 screws. I've got another Leatherman rebar inside there. Just in case, like I said, if I don't have anything but the rifle, I wanted to have kind of a little self-contained setup. So once I get the back off, say I've got to use the washer to pull these screws out to get access to the back, I've got a Leatherman in there. That's a knife, a saw, a lot of tools, file. And here's the swivel stud mounted on the inside. I don't know if you guys can see that up in there. I just put a nut on the end and one of the white washers that came with it, and again, red Loctite, one drop on the threads. Reached in there with needle nose pliers and turned it in, got it nice and snug. These are standard Ziploc baggies. I can purify water in these. I've got about 6 of these in the butt, using the SODIS method, the solar disinfection method. A lot of people don't realize. And here's one I brought along. It's full of water. They hold exactly 24 ounces of water. You fill it up from a water source, whether it's a creek or a stream or whatever you have, and you lay that in the sun, and if it's a bright sunny day, after 2-3 hours, it's going to be potable. It's going to kill the bacteria in there. This, I put together a small fishing kit. I'm not going to pull everything out, but I've got about 100 foot of line, fishing line, assortment of hooks. I can use I put the jute in here to keep my tackle. I've got sinkers, different weights, the beads and swivels. And those of you who fish know that the beads, when you tie the swivel on in the sinker, the bead keeps the sinker from hitting the knot and ruining, weakening your line. And the jute there I put in to keep things from rattling around. But it's also can be used in a pinch as fire tender in conjunction with the ferrule rod. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get all this secured back inside here, and then we'll go over the butt pouch. Stay tuned. Okay, I had to relocate. It's way too hot in the sun. Alright, in the butt pouch here, I have enough snare wire for exactly 100 18-inch long snares, so I can conserve ammo in a long-term situation, or if I run out of ammunition, I still have a way to hunt here. And this is floral wire. It's already green, so it doesn't rust, and the green makes it a little bit camo. And these are 150 foot here, 24 gauge. Bandana has a multitude of uses. One of the things that I use a bandana for is leaching acorns, and it works really good for that, for cold leaching. And then in the pouch here I've got 100 yards of dental floss, which can be used for cordage and snares and setting traps, the triggers and whatnot, knife sharpener, stone. Now in here I have a rebuild kit. It's a complete rebuild kit for the 392. Has all the seals, valve, and even a little bit of pale gun oil. More pale gun oil. And then this is silicone grease, dielectric grease. So you can grease if you have to rebuild your seals. Put a thin film of silicone grease on your seals before you install them on the valve and insert the valve in. And it's a moisturizer for the rubber. It's really good for the rubber. And then this is just Allen wrenches for the Allen wrenches for the scope and the mount for tightening things up, and lens cleaning cloth for the scope. I think I forgot to mention the scope has flip-up lens caps fore and aft. That way they're all integrated, don't have to worry about losing lens caps in the field. And that is pretty much it, guys. That's the 392 build and review. So let me get all this stowed away, and I will be back to conclude here. Stay tuned. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I did making it. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you have any questions whatsoever on the build or about the rifle or whatever, feel free to fire away in the comment section below. I'm always happy to answer questions and help out. I hope all of you are having an outstanding day or night, depending on where you're located, and I will see all of you very soon on the next one. Everybody take care. Bye-bye.